Chosen one, Archangel Michael is speaking with urgency today. You made a mistake that heaven has been quietly trying to help you see, and it is time you finally hear it clearly. Do not turn away from this message. Do not close this video and go back to pretending you do not already know what it is about to say. Something inside you has been waiting for someone to finally say it plainly, without softening it, without dressing it up. Today, that message has arrived. Take a breath. Sit with this for a moment, even if part of you feels resistant. This is not here to shame you. It is here to free you from something you have been carrying for far too long. Here is the truth. You have been choosing comfort over honesty, again and again, and calling it peace when it was actually avoidance. This is the mistake. Not a single dramatic failure, but a quiet, repeated pattern of choosing what feels easier in the moment over what you already know, deep down, is true and necessary. This message is not meant to make you feel small. It is meant to wake you up before more time slips by unnoticed. So listen closely, because what follows is not gentle, but it is honest, and honesty is exactly what you have been asking for, even if you did not realize you were asking. The first thing you need to hear is this. You have known the truth for a long time, and you have been choosing not to act on it. Not because you are lazy, not because you do not care, but because acting on it would require you to face discomfort you have been avoiding for years. A conversation you know you need to have. A decision you know you need to make. A situation you know you need to leave. You already know what it is. The moment you read those words, something in you recognized exactly what is being pointed to. That recognition is not an accident. It is the truth finally being acknowledged instead of pushed aside one more time. Consider how many quiet warning signs you have already received, long before this message reached you. A restlessness that would not settle. A conversation replayed in your mind long after it ended. A situation that kept returning to your thoughts even when you tried to distract yourself from it. These were not random occurrences. They were your own inner wisdom, speaking consistently, patiently, waiting for you to finally listen instead of override it once again. The mistake was never that you struggled. Struggling is part of being human, and no one escapes it. The mistake was allowing avoidance to become comfortable, allowing yourself to explain away, year after year, why now is still not the right time. There will always be a reason why now is not the right time, if you keep looking for one. The right time was never going to announce itself clearly. You were always going to have to choose it yourself. The second thing you need to hear is this. You have been more afraid of disappointing others than you have been afraid of disappointing yourself. This is backwards, and somewhere inside you, you already know it. Every time you chose someone else's comfort over your own truth, you quietly taught yourself that your own needs mattered less. Over time, this pattern does not just affect one decision. It reshapes how you see your entire worth. It is time to reverse this. Not by becoming careless with other people's feelings, but by finally placing your own honesty somewhere near the top of your priorities instead of near the bottom, where it has been sitting for too long. The third thing you need to hear is this. You have used busyness as a way to avoid facing what actually needs your attention. Filling your days with tasks, distractions, other people's problems, anything that keeps you from sitting quietly long enough to hear what your own spirit has been trying to tell you. Busyness feels productive. It feels responsible. But when busyness becomes a shield against your own inner truth, it stops being productivity and starts being avoidance wearing a socially acceptable disguise. Ask yourself honestly, what have you been staying busy in order to avoid facing? The fourth thing you need to hear is this. You have mistaken tolerance for virtue. Tolerating disrespect and calling it patience. Tolerating being overlooked and calling it humility. Tolerating a situation that quietly diminishes you and calling it loyalty. These are not virtues. They are self-abandonment, dressed up in language that makes them easier to accept. Real patience does not require you to disappear. Real humility does not require you to be treated as less than you are. Real loyalty does not require you to betray your own well-being repeatedly in order to prove your commitment to someone or something else. It is time to stop calling self-abandonment by kinder names. The fifth thing you need to hear is this. You have been waiting for someone else to notice how hard you have been trying, how much you have been carrying, how long you have been holding everything together quietly, without complaint. That recognition may never come from the source you have been waiting for it to come from. And waiting for it has kept you stuck, hoping to be seen instead of simply beginning to see yourself. Stop waiting to be noticed before you allow yourself to rest, to change direction, to finally prioritize your own life. Notice yourself. Acknowledge your own effort, your own strength, your own exhaustion, without needing external validation to make it real. It has always been real, whether or not anyone else ever said so. The sixth thing you need to hear is this. Somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that wanting change made you ungrateful for what you already have. This is not true, and continuing to believe it will keep you stuck in situations you have already outgrown. Gratitude and growth are not opposites. You can be thankful for what your current chapter taught you while still recognizing that its purpose in your life has come to an end. Holding on to something out of guilt, rather than genuine desire, does not honor what it once gave you. It simply delays the next chapter that is waiting for you, patiently, for as long as you are willing to make it wait. The seventh thing you need to hear is this. You have been treating rest as something you have to earn through exhaustion, rather than something you are simply allowed to have as a human being. This mistake has slowly worn you down in ways you may not have fully measured yet, because exhaustion tends to creep in quietly, disguised as normal, until it becomes the only state you remember feeling. Rest is not a reward for suffering enough first. It is a basic need, as essential as food or water, and denying yourself rest until you feel you have earned it is not discipline. It is a slow, quiet form of self-neglect that heaven is asking you today to finally stop. The eighth thing you need to hear is this. You have let fear of failure stop you from attempting things that genuinely mattered to you, and in doing so, you guaranteed a different kind of failure, the failure of never trying at all. This is often the quietest, least visible failure, because no one witnesses it, no one criticizes it, and it is easy to convince yourself it does not count. But it counts. Every dream you quietly buried out of fear still lives somewhere inside you, still asking, occasionally, whether today might finally be the day you take it seriously again. Failure after trying teaches you something valuable. Never trying at all teaches you nothing except how to keep waiting. The ninth thing you need to hear is this. You have allowed old wounds to make decisions for you in the present, without realizing it. A fear of abandonment shaping how tightly you hold on to relationships that no longer serve you. A fear of failure shaping how small you have kept your ambitions. A fear of rejection shaping how rarely you speak your true opinions out loud. These old wounds deserve compassion, not criticism, because they were formed for understandable reasons, often during times when you had far less power to protect yourself than you have now. But compassion does not mean allowing them to keep steering your life indefinitely. At some point, healing requires recognizing when an old wound is speaking, and gently choosing a different response than the one it is asking for. The 10th thing you need to hear is this. You have spent significant energy trying to control outcomes that were never fully within your control to begin with, while neglecting the things that actually were within your control. How you show up each day. The effort you put in. The honesty you choose to practice. The boundaries you choose to set. Redirecting your energy away from things beyond your control and toward things within it will not guarantee every outcome you hope for. But it will guarantee that you showed up as fully yourself along the way, which is, in the end, the only thing that was ever truly yours to offer. The 11th thing you need to hear is this. You have measured your worth against a standard that was never actually fair to begin with, comparing your entire complicated inner life to the polished, edited outer appearance of people around you. This comparison always leaves you feeling behind, not because you actually are behind, but because you are comparing two things that were never meant to be compared honestly in the first place, your full reality against someone else's curated highlight. Release this comparison, not by pretending it never happens, but by consciously reminding yourself, each time it arises, that you are seeing only a fraction of someone else's actual experience, just as they are only seeing a fraction of yours. The 12th thing you need to hear is this. You have treated your own emotions as inconvenient obstacles to push past quickly, rather than as valuable information deserving genuine attention. Sadness dismissed as unproductive. Anger suppressed as inappropriate. Fear overridden as weakness. Each of these emotions was actually trying to tell you something important, and dismissing them repeatedly has not made them disappear. It has simply pushed them further underground, where they continue to influence you, quietly, without your full awareness. Begin treating your emotions as messengers rather than as problems to be solved as quickly as possible. Ask what each one is trying to communicate, rather than immediately trying to make it go away. The 13th thing you need to hear is this. You have quietly believed that once you fix yourself completely, once every flaw is smoothed over and every wound is fully healed, only then will you finally deserve the life you want. This belief keeps the good life permanently out of reach, because complete healing, total flawlessness, is not actually a real destination anyone arrives at. It is a moving target that keeps receding the closer you get to it. You do not need to be finished healing to begin living more fully. You are allowed to pursue your dreams while still working through your wounds. You are allowed to build a meaningful life alongside your imperfections, rather than waiting for them to disappear entirely first. Waiting for total healing before beginning is simply another form of the same avoidance already discussed throughout this message. The 14th thing you need to hear is this. You have been more loyal to your own suffering, in certain areas of your life, than to your own healing. This sounds strange, perhaps even uncomfortable to consider, but it happens more often than most people realize. Suffering can become familiar, even identity-forming, to the point where healing feels disorienting, like losing a part of yourself you had grown used to carrying. If some part of you resists healing, even while another part of you longs for it, this internal conflict deserves gentle attention rather than judgment. Ask yourself honestly what the suffering has been protecting you from, or what identity it has quietly provided, before you can fully release your grip on it. Now that these 14 truths have been spoken plainly, here is the warning underneath all of them. If these patterns continue unaddressed, they will not simply stay the same size forever. They tend to grow quietly, over years, until the gap between the life you are living and the life you actually wanted becomes difficult to ignore, painful to face, and harder to correct than it would have been if addressed earlier. This is not meant to frighten you into panic. It is meant to give you clarity while there is still time to make different choices, gently, gradually, starting today, rather than waiting until circumstances force a harsher confrontation with the same lessons later. You are being given the chance, right now, in this message, to begin correcting course before that harder confrontation becomes necessary. This is not punishment. This is mercy, arriving in the form of honest, direct truth, rather than allowing you to continue unaware for even one more day. So what do you do with this? Not everything at once. That would be overwhelming, and overwhelm often leads right back to avoidance, the very pattern this message is asking you to release. Instead, choose one truth from everything shared today, the one that landed most sharply, the one your body reacted to most strongly as you read it. That is the one asking for your attention first. Sit with that truth honestly. Do not rush to fix it immediately. Simply acknowledge it, fully, without the usual excuses that have kept it comfortably ignored until now. Acknowledgement alone is a powerful first step, one that many people never actually take, choosing instead to stay in a comfortable fog of partial awareness indefinitely. Once you have acknowledged it, ask yourself one honest question. What is the smallest possible step I could take today that would move me even slightly in a more honest direction regarding this truth? Not the whole solution. Just one small step. That is enough to begin breaking a pattern that may have been in place for years. Remember that heaven is not angry at you the way this message's tone might have suggested at first. That tone was simply urgency, love expressed with enough directness to finally cut through years of gentle reminders that were, perhaps, too gentle to actually be heard. The urgency comes from care, not from judgment. You are not being condemned. You are being urgently, lovingly, asked to wake up before more time passes unnecessarily. Think, too, about how differently your relationships might feel if you allowed people to fully see the parts of you that you currently keep hidden out of fear of judgment. Most people carry a curated version of themselves into their relationships, revealing only what feels safe, keeping the messier, more complicated parts tucked away. This protects against certain kinds of rejection, but it also prevents the deeper kind of connection that only becomes possible when someone truly knows you, fully, and chooses to stay anyway. Consider taking one small risk in an important relationship, revealing something slightly more honest than you normally would. Not everything at once, not with everyone, but with someone you trust enough to test whether deeper honesty might actually be met with acceptance rather than the rejection you have been quietly fearing. Consider how much lighter your life could feel if you finally released the exhausting effort of maintaining patterns that no longer serve you. The energy spent avoiding difficult conversations. The energy spent tolerating situations that quietly diminish you. The energy spent waiting for permission, recognition, or certainty that was never actually required before you could begin. All of that energy, redirected toward honest, aligned action, could accomplish far more than years of careful avoidance ever managed to protect you from. This is the invitation underneath this entire message. Not to punish yourself for the years already spent in these patterns, but to finally, gently, firmly, begin choosing differently starting today. You are not being asked to become a different person overnight. You are simply being asked to stop abandoning the person you already are, underneath all the fear, all the people-pleasing, all the quiet self-neglect that has accumulated over time. That person has been waiting patiently, for a long time, for you to finally choose them. Choose them today. Take one more moment before this message ends. There is one final layer worth adding here, because it grounds everything already spoken in something practical you can actually carry forward. Think about the difference between insight and integration. Insight is understanding a truth intellectually, nodding along as it is spoken, recognizing yourself in the words. Integration is when that truth actually begins reshaping your daily choices, your reactions, your habits, over time, through repeated practice rather than a single moment of recognition. Many people experience powerful insight regularly, through messages like this one, through conversations, through quiet moments of reflection, yet very little of that insight ever becomes integration, because integration requires ongoing effort long after the initial emotional impact of the insight has faded. Do not mistake the emotional resonance you may be feeling right now for the completion of the work. This message is the beginning of insight. The days and weeks ahead, filled with small, repeated choices, are where actual integration happens. Think about how you will know if integration is actually occurring, weeks from now, rather than the insight simply fading back into forgotten intentions. Integration shows up quietly, in small, almost unremarkable moments. Catching yourself mid-pattern and choosing differently, just once, where before you would have continued automatically. Noticing an old critical thought and gently questioning it, rather than immediately believing it without question. These small moments do not feel dramatic when they happen. They rarely feel like a breakthrough in the moment itself. But collected together over weeks and months, they are exactly what genuine, lasting change actually looks like from the inside. Consider choosing one specific, concrete action tied to whichever truth landed most strongly for you today. Not a vague intention to be more honest or more confident, but something specific and measurable. A particular conversation to have this week. A particular boundary to state clearly the next time it becomes relevant. A particular old pattern to notice and interrupt the next time it arises. Specificity turns insight into something you can actually act on, rather than something that simply feels meaningful for a few minutes before fading back into the noise of daily life. Think, too, about setting aside a small amount of time in the coming days, even 10 or 15 minutes, to sit quietly and reflect on what has been shared in this message. Not to memorize it, but to notice which parts continue returning to your mind afterward. Those returning thoughts are often pointing toward exactly what needs the most attention in your life right now, more reliably than an initial reaction in the moment often can. Remember also that this work does not have to be done in isolation. If there is someone in your life who might understand, who might offer support as you begin making these changes, consider sharing at least part of what you have reflected on today with them. Change attempted entirely alone is possible, but change supported by even one understanding person tends to be more sustainable, more resilient against the inevitable setbacks that occur along any meaningful journey. Take one more moment before this message ends. Silently name, to yourself, the one mistake spoken about today that felt most true for your own life. You do not need to say it out loud. You simply need to stop pretending, even privately, that you do not already know exactly what it is. That honest acknowledgement is the beginning of everything that follows. Everything else, the healing, the changed decisions, the different life waiting on the other side of this pattern, will unfold gradually from this single honest moment, if you allow it to. This message reached you today for a reason. It was not gentle, because gentleness had already been offered many times before, quietly, and had not fully broken through. Today required something more direct. Trust that this directness came from care, not from cruelty. Carry this message with you. Return to it when old patterns try to pull you backward, as they sometimes will. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone forced you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know exactly what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today, even the parts that were difficult to hear. Be gentle with yourself as you begin correcting course, one honest choice at a time. There is more this message needs to say, because the deepest patterns often hide beneath the ones already named, and they deserve to be brought into the light as well. Think about how often you have apologized for things that did not actually require an apology. Apologizing for having needs. Apologizing for taking up time in a conversation. Apologizing for feeling something inconvenient at an inconvenient moment. This habit, repeated enough times, quietly teaches your own mind that your presence itself is something that requires excusing. It does not. You are allowed to exist, fully, without constantly softening yourself into something smaller and less inconvenient for everyone around you. Notice, over the coming days, how often the word sorry leaves your mouth for things that were never actually wrong. Begin replacing some of those apologies with simple, direct statements instead. Not everything requires an apology. Some things simply require being said. Consider, too, the quiet resentment that builds when you consistently give more than you receive in a relationship, whether that relationship is romantic, familial, or a friendship. Giving freely, from a place of genuine generosity, is beautiful. Giving constantly, from a place of fear that you will not be loved otherwise, is exhausting, and it eventually breeds resentment, even in relationships that started out with good intentions on both sides. Ask yourself honestly whether your giving in certain relationships comes from abundance or from fear. If it comes from fear, that fear deserves attention, not because giving is wrong, but because giving born from fear rarely brings the peace that genuine generosity is meant to bring. Think about the specific moments when you feel most like yourself, most alive, most at ease. Chances are, you can name at least one or two such moments without much difficulty. Now ask yourself honestly, how much of your current daily life actually includes those moments, and how much of your daily life has drifted away from them, replaced instead by obligation, routine, and the quiet accumulation of other people's priorities. This drift often happens so gradually that it goes unnoticed for years. One small compromise at a time, none of them dramatic on their own, slowly adding up until the life you are living looks very different from the life that once made you feel most like yourself. Reclaiming even small pieces of that former aliveness, a hobby set aside, a friendship left untended, a simple pleasure forgotten amid busyness, can begin restoring a sense of self that has quietly been buried under years of obligation. Consider the specific voice inside you that speaks loudest during moments of self-doubt. Whose voice does it actually sound like? For many people, this inner critical voice closely resembles a parent, a former teacher, an old friend, or some other significant figure from earlier in life, someone whose criticism, whether intended harshly or not, became internalized and now runs on autoplay whenever self-doubt arises. Recognizing whose voice this actually is can be surprisingly powerful. It is not, in fact, an objective, all-knowing verdict on your worth. It is simply an old recording, borrowed from someone else, playing back automatically because it was repeated often enough at a formative time. You are allowed to consciously choose whether that borrowed voice still deserves the authority it has held over your self-perception for so long. Think about how differently you might treat your own timeline for healing and change if you removed the pressure of an imaginary deadline. Many people quietly punish themselves for not having healed faster, not having changed sooner, not having figured things out at the same pace as someone else they compare themselves to. This pressure rarely speeds up genuine change. It usually just adds shame on top of an already difficult process. Healing and growth do not follow a fixed schedule. They unfold according to the actual complexity of what is being healed, the support available, and countless other factors unique to each individual life. Release the imaginary deadline you have placed on your own progress. You are not behind. You are simply moving through your own process, at the pace your own process actually requires. Consider, too, how much your relationship with money, whether you have a great deal of it or very little, has been shaped by fear rather than by clear, intentional choice. Fear of never having enough, leading to hoarding behavior that brings no actual peace even when there is plenty. Fear of not deserving financial security, leading to unconsciously sabotaging opportunities that would have improved your circumstances. These patterns run deep, often formed early in life, and they deserve honest examination rather than continued unconscious repetition. You do not need to solve your entire relationship with money today. But beginning to notice the emotional patterns underneath your financial decisions, rather than assuming those decisions are purely logical, can open the door to healthier choices moving forward. Think about the quiet difference between humility and self-erasure. Humility says, I am one valuable part of a larger picture, not more important than others, but not less important either. Self-erasure says, my needs, my voice, my presence do not really matter compared to everyone else's. These two states can look similar from the outside, both involving a person who does not demand excessive attention, but internally, they feel completely different, and they lead to very different long-term outcomes for a person's well-being. If you have been living in self-erasure while calling it humility, today is an invitation to gently begin shifting toward the genuine version instead, one where your needs are acknowledged as real and valid, simply existing alongside everyone else's, rather than beneath them. There is still more worth naming before this message reaches its true conclusion, because some patterns only reveal themselves once the earlier ones have already been acknowledged. Think about how often you have confused being needed with being loved. Somewhere along the way, many people learn that their value comes from what they provide, what they fix, what they carry for others, rather than from simply being who they are. This confusion can lead to relationships built around usefulness rather than genuine connection, relationships that quietly leave a person feeling exhausted and, paradoxically, still unseen despite being constantly needed by others. Being needed is not the same as being known. Being useful is not the same as being cherished. If you have built much of your sense of belonging around what you provide for others, it is worth gently asking whether you are known and valued for who you are underneath all of that giving, or only for the function you serve. This is not a comfortable question, but it is an honest one, and honest questions are exactly what this message has come to offer. Consider, too, how much of your identity has been constructed in opposition to something, rather than in alignment with something. Defining yourself as not like my parents, not like that difficult person from your past, not like the version of yourself you are ashamed of. This kind of identity, built entirely in reaction to something you are trying to avoid becoming, can leave a person disconnected from a positive, clear sense of who they actually are, beyond simply who they are determined not to be. There is real value in eventually shifting from an identity built on avoidance toward an identity built on genuine values, chosen deliberately rather than formed simply in reaction to old pain. Ask yourself, beyond what you do not want to become, who do you actually want to become? This question deserves real reflection, not a quick surface-level answer. Think about the specific fear that arises when you imagine fully succeeding at something you have been working toward. Not failing, but succeeding, completely, visibly, undeniably. For many people, this fear is just as strong as the fear of failure, sometimes stronger, because success brings increased visibility, increased expectation, and the uncomfortable possibility of losing an identity built around struggling rather than around thriving. If success brings up unexpected fear for you, this is worth examining honestly rather than dismissing. You are allowed to succeed. You are allowed to be seen clearly, fully, without needing to sabotage that visibility once it finally begins to arrive. Consider also how you handle moments when someone offers you a genuine compliment. Do you receive it fully, or do you quickly deflect it, minimize it, redirect the conversation elsewhere? Many people who struggle with self-worth have developed an automatic habit of deflecting anything positive said about them, as though accepting it fully would somehow be arrogant or undeserved. Practice, starting today, simply saying thank you when a genuine compliment is offered, without immediately following it with a counterargument about why it is not entirely true. This small practice, repeated over time, can gradually shift how comfortable you become with being seen positively, rather than constantly deflecting it away. Think about the quiet cost of always being the one who initiates repair after conflict, even when the conflict was not entirely, or even mostly, your responsibility. If you have consistently been the one to apologize first, to reach out first, to smooth things over first, regardless of who actually caused the difficulty, this pattern deserves honest examination. It may reflect genuine maturity in some cases. In other cases, it may reflect a fear of conflict so strong that you would rather take on blame that is not fully yours than tolerate the discomfort of unresolved tension. Notice which situation actually applies in your own relationships. Genuine maturity and fear-based overfunctioning can look remarkably similar from the outside, but they come from very different internal places, and only you can honestly assess which one is truly driving your behavior in each specific relationship. As this message moves toward its true conclusion, remember that everything shared today was offered with care, even the parts that felt sharp or uncomfortable to hear. Sometimes the most loving thing a message can do is refuse to keep softening a truth that has already been softened many times before without effect. You are capable of hearing hard truths without being destroyed by them. You have survived difficult realizations before, and you grew stronger for having faced them honestly rather than continuing to avoid them. Trust that same capacity within yourself now, as you sit with everything this message has offered today. This message reached you today for a reason. It was not gentle, because gentleness had already been offered many times before, quietly, and had not fully broken through. Today required something more direct. Trust that this directness came from care, not from cruelty. Carry this message with you. Return to it when old patterns try to pull you backward, as they sometimes will. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone forced you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know exactly what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today, even the parts that were difficult to hear. Be gentle with yourself as you begin correcting course, one honest choice at a time. One last reflection before this message truly closes. Heaven does not measure you by the number of times you have fallen into these patterns. It measures the sincerity of your willingness to finally rise from them, today, imperfectly, honestly, one step at a time. That willingness is enough to begin. It was always enough. Go now, and live like someone who finally heard what needed to be heard.